This video will show you how to put together and stretch a canvas. You're going to start with your stretcher bars. You buy them as two pairs, so two equally sized lengths. This one is 16 by 20. You'll notice that I'm actually, as I'm putting each of these little keyed corners together, I'm making sure that the size shows up all the way around on each side. That might make it easy for you if you forget later on what size it is, and you can just check the back without having to grab any kind of a ruler or tape measure. I didn't just stick them together and then start stretching. You'll notice I go over to a door frame here to make sure that the corners are at 90 degrees, that they're perfectly square. It's not going to fit into a frame later on well if it is not square. So you just kind of keep rotating the whole stretcher through the door and tapping it with a hammer until you can be satisfied that it is aligning with that corner, that top corner there. You can't just do one on each corner. You have to kind of keep going around and around because it will shift every single time. Okay, now you'll notice that I'm making sure that those sizes are sticking up so that they're in the back of the canvas later on and that you are able to read those. So you cut your piece of canvas with probably 2 or 3 inches around the back. We are not going to trim it off so that it is flush with the side. Sometimes people will put their staples in right on the edge. I always make sure that it goes around the back. Make sure that you have plenty of extra staples in your staple gun and you have some on hand. You just stick them in the back there and then put in the holder there that's spring-loaded, and then you're ready to begin. Okay, you don't actually stretch very tightly with the first staples that you put in. So you're going to work from one side to its opposite side and then go to the other length and then its opposite side right in the center. Just put one to place the canvas in the center. You'll notice that that crease that's in the canvas is slightly coming out, but this is not extra tight right now. It shouldn't be loose, but it isn't going to be very tight because there's not that much that's holding it right now. So it's got a little tension, but it's not overly tight, and you can still see some of the wrinkles. You will see that as I'm pulling, I'm not pulling straight across, just straight across. I'm also pulling to the closest corner from where I am stretching. So I'm pulling across, but then I'm pulling toward that edge too. You kind of have to go at a diagonal pattern. So I'm doing one staple on either side of the center one that I placed, doing the opposite side, then doing the same thing again. You can keep testing it to see how much tension it has. Every time you'll see that you're getting a few less of the wrinkles in the canvas, and it's getting a little bit tighter. It does take a lot of practice. Most of my students have too loose of stretching the very first time, but your fingers get a little stronger as you work on this. So you can see I've done that all the way around here. It's getting quite a bit more tension in it. I'm not going to go all the way to the end. You have to leave some room, and I'll show you why you have to do that in a second here. You'll also see that each of those staples that is in the sides, in the back sides, is at an angle. I tend to not make them just in line and parallel to the stretcher bar. I find that sometimes it's easier for the canvas to tear when they're like that. So when it's at an angle, it seems to work a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going close to the end, but I'm leaving probably a couple inches as I'm alternating one side to the next. But you have to leave enough room so that you can finish off the corners, and that's what I'm about to do here. Finishing the corners is by far the most difficult part of this whole process, and so I'm going to show you all 4 corners. You have actually kind of 2 folds that go over. You need a little extra room. You can see where the staples end behind my hand there on the side that's actually going to be folded over. So you have one fold that folds down to the side. See, this one here is going to fold right down and be even with the edge. the other fold coming in another little triangular piece will go on top of that. You may have to keep twisting the canvas around so that it comes up even, and then you can put your staples in there and put it in place. That seems really simple the way that I'm doing it, but this is the thing that students don't ever seem to be able to remember how to do or understand exactly how it works. So that's why we're showing all 4 of these corners. Now you want to do the next corner so that your flap comes over easily. So you should have 2 flaps coming around the back. See how this one is on top, it's the longer side. We're going to do the other long side coming over. You don't want alternating corners to be finished this way, or it will actually bunch up your canvas in a strange way on the back side of the canvas. You're trying to make sure that things are as even on here, both on the edge and in the back, because it's going to be a lot easier to put a frame around that. Okay, so again, 1 fold coming down over the top, the other one coming down over the top of that, and twisting to make sure that everything kind of comes up even there. I am adding a little bit of tension as I'm doing this, so that everything is really tight on the corners as well. It's not just that I'm finishing that off and I've done all the other staples before. Okay, 1 more of these. Again, make sure that comes down over the top, and the other one comes down again. With this video, you can look at this multiple times and keep it on your smartphone or whatever, and just keep watching it to make sure that you understand how this works. But it does take a few times of doing this, a few canvases, not just a few corners, to remember how to do it correctly. And then you have your finished stretched canvas. What I'm going to show you right here is that with a cotton canvas especially, and if you didn't stretch it as much as it needed to be stretched, just spray some water on it and let that dry. It's cotton. That will actually give it some more tension because it will shrink a little bit. Once that's fully dry, you can go ahead and start adding your layers of gesso. We're going to do 2 layers on this. Use a good brush. You'll notice every now and then I'm pulling out a little hair on this because I used a fairly cheap brush. You will be doing that constantly if you get a really cheap brush. Get a nice house painter's brush that has probably like nylon bristles in it, and that it'll cost you a little bit more, but it's going to save you some time and energy later on. The canvas, when it's raw like this, really soaks up the gesso quite easily. So the first coat is a little harder to put on there and takes probably a little bit longer because you're really getting that into the material, that fabric. It's really soaking into it. You probably don't want to use too much water at that stage, but you may use more water with your gesso later on. You will see that I'm doing the whole front of the canvas. You don't need to press it so hard that it's kind of squirting through the back in little dots, but you do need to do the edges too. The reason that we stretch all the way around and leave all of that extra fabric is because you may need to restretch your canvas, or someone else may need to restretch it later on. If you trim it so that everything is trimmed off of the back and you just put the staples on those edges, what you'll find is that it's really hard to restretch because there's nothing to hold on to. Here I'm showing you why we're doing 2 coats. Okay, so I put that light up there, and as we look through the back, you see it's a little bit lighter, but there, right toward the right of the screen was a little pinhole. Coming from the left, there's another couple more going toward the right. So those are open areas that did not get filled in. After years of stretching and gessoing canvases, that will still happen with me. You do need 2 coats on your canvas, and depending on how much of the texture you want through, you may do more coats than that and sand in between. You'll notice I'm going the other direction here too, to keep a consistent kind of canvas weave with this. So it's a little easier to put this coat on again because you've already had the gesso soaking in, so you might use a little bit more water. Make sure that you let each layer or coat fully dry before you put the next one on, and it should be about 90 minutes that it takes to dry before it's ready to put a second coat or to draw on it for the painting.